All right, Vol fans. All right, SEC fans. All right, ACC fans. Catfish here, bringing it to you live from the Volunteer Roadshow Studios in Spokane, Washington. And we've got a special guest on the show. He's been on our show a couple times before, and we've got Pigskin Peete. How you doing, Pigskin Peete?
How you doing, Catfish? I'm doing great, man.
Well, we're glad you're on the show. I know you've got to be feeling pretty bad right now, but tell us how you feel the game went and what happened there. I really didn't expect it to be this score at the end. I really wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to be a close game, but tell us what you think about what happened during the game there for you.
Well, I think everyone expected it to be closer than it was, but the bottom line is that was just a good old-fashioned butt whooping. And the thing was that Alabama was clearly the better team, and that showed. And Clemson doesn't belong in the national championship if they're not, if they can't give a better showing than they did last night. But Alabama dominated them. The first half, Clemson was in it up into the third quarter. And then there's a couple of plays, a couple of turnovers that led to, two touchdowns within a couple of minutes that really just sort of deflated the entire Clemson football team. And there was no coming back from that. Alabama was just too vicious and unrelenting and was not going to let Clemson get back in that game. So Clemson just got outplayed. But I'm not disappointed with the season. I'm disappointed with the outcome of the game, like most Clemson fans are. But to come back to the national, to the playoff after winning a national title and losing the best player in the country, nobody thought that was going to happen. So I am optimistic about the future with Clemson. They're not going anywhere. So we're out this year, but we'll be back.
Well, like I told you just a minute ago, I thought it was going to be close. But I tell you what, when I heard that Alabama got selected to be in the playoffs, I was thinking deep down nobody really wants to play Alabama because they'll have time to heal up. They were nicked up on defense the last few games, and that was just going to be a tough row to hoe. And like you told us on one of the previous videos you were on my show, you said you felt like the winner of this game is going to win the national championship. Do you still feel that way?
I do, and I have been saying that ever since they released that Alabama was in. That I think that Clemson and Alabama are the two best teams in the country. Now, that was before I saw the Georgia and Oklahoma game. So I think Georgia this year is probably better than Clemson too. I don't think Clemson's even the second best team in the country this year. Georgia's done better than Clemson, Alabama too. But what Georgia did in that Rose Bowl was just unbelievable. And they almost seem like that sort of team of destiny, like Clemson was last year, and they haven't won it in, almost 40 years or whatever, just like Clemson hadn't done that. And they're the underdog to Alabama, just like Clemson was. The whole storyline seems very similar. But if I had to put my own money on it, I would probably bet on Alabama to win the game. But it will be interesting to see how Georgia handles this against Alabama.
Well, before the Rose Bowl, I'd always thought that last year's national championship game was the greatest game I remember, and I've been watching college football over 40 years. And when I tell you what, that Rose Bowl was a classic. To turn in to the radio at halftime or just before halftime when they kicked that 55-yard field goal, I still thought, man, this game's over. I'm impressed with Georgia, how they were able to get it together. And after being down that far, because it's hard enough to score, and it's hard enough to keep up with Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield as it was, and I just thought that lead was just too far out for them. But kudos for them. They showed the world that they can buckle down on defense and actually brought some offense to that second half, and I was impressed with them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been saying the whole time before this Rose Bowl game that if Oklahoma gets out to a big lead early in the game, it's going to be hard for Georgia to come back from that. Well, that's exactly what Georgia did, was come back from a big lead. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I did, however, pick Georgia to win the game by, I think I said 3 points is what my prediction was, and they won, by 6 in overtime. But I knew it wasn't going to be a blowout. I knew Oklahoma was going to blow Georgia out, and I knew Georgia was going to blow Oklahoma out. And it ended up being, a triple overtime game or whatever. So no one got blown out. But Georgia had more heart than Oklahoma did. and they wanted to win more, and they, willed themselves to victory and just took the game over in that second half. It was very impressive to watch, and one of the most exciting games I've seen all year, if not the most exciting game.
And I tell you what Kirby Smart has done in Georgia in just a couple of years is just very impressive. It's almost unfair what they're doing on the recruiting trail. I mean, you might as well give them the moniker 5-star U because they've been reeling in some big-time recruits. And let's talk about recruiting a little bit. Let's put the past in the rearview mirror. Let's talk about what's in store for your Clemson Tigers on the recruiting trail. Is there any news you can give the viewers of the Volunteer Roadshow on Clemson recruiting?
Yeah, well, I mean, he just continues to excel at recruiting, and the past, I don't want to say 3 or 4 years, we've been in the top 15 class. And then there's been a couple years in there we've been in the top 5 class. And this year, I think we're ranked at number 5 right now. So we're right there with the best of the best in recruiting and doing it at a consistent basis now. So that's one of the reasons I say Clemson's not going anywhere. But the most notable recruit, everybody knows who it is, Trevor Lawrence, this high school quarterback stud, number 1 pocket passer coming out of college or coming out of high school from Georgia. He's coming to Clemson. The other one was the player that we got from or stole from Ohio State, Jackson Carman, who was a number 1 prospect out of the state of Ohio, 5-star recruit. Those are two most notable, and we can just continue to stack up on offense and at the wide receiver position. So as far as recruiting goes, I couldn't be much happier than I am with the way Clemson's been recruiting lately and in the foreseeable future, at least.
Well, let's look past the signing day coming up this year and look towards next season. This is an SEC show, but tell our viewers, what are y'all losing as far as to the draft, and what are you expecting next year to be?
Well, here's the good news. There's not a lot of seniors on this team. There's several players that haven't declared whether or not they're going, and I don't think they are the ones that like Deion Kane, a star wide receiver. And there's a couple of others. I think Renfro will even be back. He's still eligible. But it's a very young team. We're not losing a lot. Last year, we lost a lot on defense and a lot on offense. You know how these things sort of skip a year. Mm-hmm. One year you have an old team, and the next year you have a younger team. It's sort of cyclical. But this year, we're not losing much. So we'll actually probably be more stacked next year, a little bit more, at least on offense and defense, actually. Than we were this year. So no complaints as far as that goes. We don't have a lot leaving.
Well, that's kind of scary to the rest of college football world. If y'all were going to be more stacked next year than you are this year, y'all might be a shoe in for the playoffs next year. And let's switch gears a little bit. You're kind of my ACC correspondent here. Kind of tell everybody how did ACC do this year in the bowl game, and what do you expect next year? Are there any contenders that'll give Clemson a run for their money next year?
Yeah, the ACC didn't do great in their bowl games this year. Now, the past, I think 2 years in a row, they've won the most games, out of all the conferences in the bowl games. But anyways, I think they went 4-6. A couple of unexcusable losses. A lot of their losses were actually teams they probably shouldn't have beat anyway. And Florida State beat a high school team for their win. Miami lost to a great Wisconsin team. Boston College lost a close game to Iowa. Anyway, you can go down the list. The worst conference this year in the bowl games was the Pac-12. They were like 1-8 or something. They won one, right? Anyway, the Pac-12 was embarrassing. As far as Clemson's competition in the ACC here in the next year, I think you certainly have to look at Miami. They're trending upwards and had a really great recruiting class also. It's really interesting to see how Willie Taggart's going to do with all that talent that Jimbo left him at Florida State. He's still got a lot of talent coming back that he didn't recruit. They were 5-star guys. So it'd be interesting to see how Florida State does. NC State, I think, will be good. Virginia Tech, I think, is trending upwards, even though they had a disappointing year this year. That coach is only in his 3rd year, and he's also recruiting much better than they were before. I think that there's probably 4 or 5 teams that are, above average, at least in the ACC. And of course, a couple of great teams in either Clemson and Florida State or Clemson and Miami, or a combination of the three.
Well, I really do appreciate you coming on the show. And before we get off of here, I've got another birthday wish. We've got Tim Jennings from Jasper, Florida, who's a Gator fan that's got a birthday coming up on the 5th. So, Tim Jennings, I'm glad you watched the show, and you have a happy, happy birthday. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and check out Pigskin Pete's channel, too. We both started this September, and he's got a really good channel going on over there, and I'll put a link to his channel in the description of this video. And I appreciate you coming on there, Pigskin, and we'll do this again.
Hey, anytime, man. It's always fun to chat with you.
All right, everybody say it with me. Say it with me now, Pigskin. Go Vols. We're going 15-0. I promise you that.